Have you ever felt like some people only remember you when they need something? If they keep asking for your help but never give back, it's not friendship, it's quiet dependency. They assume you'll always say yes, always pick up, always carry their weight. But what if I told you that the moment you stop showing up is the moment they show their true face? It's like a tree that offers shade all summer until autumn comes and the leaves fall and the people who once rested beneath it move on without a glance. Or it's like a bridge walked across 1,000 times, but when it starts to crack, no one stops to repair it. They just find another way across. Just like the tree and the bridge, your help was never truly seen. It was expected. And the moment you stop giving, they don't ask why. They just leave. Because while you were being generous, they were being opportunistic. And when you finally say no, their silence says everything you needed to hear. That it was never about who you are. It was always about what you could offer. So, how do you handle the people who only come around when they want something? Stick with me until the end, because the last truth will give you the strength to stop pouring into the wrong hands. Let's begin. Number 1. Recognize the pattern of one-sided giving. Let's talk about a behavior that feels innocent at first, but over time, it slowly empties you. It's when someone constantly turns to you for help, your time, your energy, your support, but never once stops to ask how you're doing. At first, it might feel good to be needed. You're the helper, the reliable one, the person they know will always say yes. But here's what we often miss. When someone keeps asking and never offers anything back, that's not kindness. It's quiet exploitation. Here's the truth. People like this don't need help. They rely on your willingness to ignore your own boundaries. And the longer it continues, the more you begin to feel it. You leave every interaction drained. You start dreading their messages, not because you don't care, but because you know it'll be another request, another favor, another crisis that somehow always becomes your responsibility. And when the tables turn, when you're the one in need, they vanish. Suddenly, they're too busy, too tired, or they change the subject entirely. That's when the pattern becomes clear. This was never a mutual relationship. It was a transaction, one where only they profited. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes powerful. Epictetus once said, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." When we invest too much of ourselves into people who take and never give, we hand over pieces of our emotional stability. A Stoic doesn't just observe words, they observe patterns. And when someone's pattern is take with no effort to give, the wise response isn't more giving, it's pulling back and protecting your peace. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Rachel, was always the friend who showed up. Need a ride? She was there. Need help moving? She'd cancel her own plans. But one day, Rachel had a family emergency and reached out for help. And guess what? The people she'd always shown up for were nowhere to be found. No texts, no calls, not even a reply. That was the moment she realized this wasn't friendship. It was dependence masquerading as connection. So, how do you handle this? First, stop explaining your exhaustion. If someone doesn't notice how much you've given, they're not going to understand when you finally set boundaries. Second, observe, not what they say, but what they do. And third, remember, your energy is a limited resource. Invest it where it's respected, not where it's consumed. At the end of the day, helping others is noble, but being used is not. A Stoic gives from strength, not from sacrifice. If every interaction leaves you emptier, it's not love, it's imbalance. Protect your peace, recognize the pattern, and know when it's time to stop showing up for people who never show up for you. Number 2, stop explaining why you can't always help. Let's talk about a quiet habit that ends up costing you more than you realize, constantly explaining why you can't help. You tell yourself you're being polite, considerate, respectful. You soften your no with long justifications. I would, but I'm really busy. Or, I'm so sorry, I wish I could, but... And at first, it seems harmless. But here's the problem. The more you explain your boundaries, the more some people learn how to step over them. Here's the truth. When you give reasons for saying no, some people don't hear your limits. They hear an opening. They see your explanations as negotiations. If you say you're busy, they'll ask, how about later? If you say you're overwhelmed, they'll respond with guilt. I know you're tired, but I really need this. And slowly, you start shrinking yourself, bending your schedule, abandoning your peace just to avoid feeling guilty for protecting your own time. It becomes a pattern where every no must be defended and every act of self-care is treated like a betrayal. This is where Stoic wisdom reminds us to stand firm. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." In other words, you don't have to explain goodness, you show it through your actions. And the same applies to boundaries. You don't owe people essays when you say no, you owe yourself peace. A calm, firm refusal spoken with integrity carries more strength than any over-explained justification. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Brian, was the go-to person for everyone around him. Need a ride? Ask Brian. Need help moving? Brian won't say no. But over time, he realized he wasn't doing it out of joy anymore. He was doing it out of pressure. And whenever he tried to decline, he'd explain himself to the point of exhaustion. Until one day, he simply said, "I'm not available." No long excuse, no extra story, just a clear boundary. And you know what? The people who truly respected him didn't need an explanation. They accepted it. The ones who pushed back, those were the ones who had been benefiting from his overgiving all along. So how do you apply this? First, remind yourself, a simple no is a full sentence. Second, let silence do the heavy lifting. You don't have to convince anyone to respect your boundaries, just consistently enforce them. And third, trust that real relationships don't collapse when you honor your limits. They grow stronger. At the end of the day, you don't need to justify your peace. The people who value you will understand it without explanation, and those who don't, they were never really listening anyway. Stop explaining, start protecting, and let your no speak for itself. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3, ask yourself this: would they do the same for me? Let's talk about one of the most important questions you need to ask, especially if they keep asking for your help but never give back. That question is, would they do the same for me? Not in theory, not in words, in action. If the roles were reversed, if you needed the late-night advice, the emotional support, the last-minute favor, would they show up for you the way you've shown up for them? Would they drop what they're doing to make space for your pain? Or would they suddenly vanish behind excuses and silence? Here's the truth. Some people aren't interested in mutual relationships. They're looking for emotional resources. They want your time, your energy, your care, but only when it's convenient for them. And when you stop to think about it, you realize the giving has always been one way. You've bent over backwards to be available, but the moment you need something in return, the connection feels cold. That's not loyalty, that's dependence disguised as closeness. This is where Stoic clarity becomes your greatest tool. Zeno of Citium once said, "Examine not the words of others, but their deeds." In other words, don't let flowery language fool you. Watch their behavior. If someone says you're important but never shows up when it counts, their absence is louder than their promises. A Stoic looks beyond emotions and asks, what does this person's pattern reveal about who they really are? Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Megan, was always the helper in her friend group. She offered rides, lent money, stayed up late comforting people going through breakups. But one day, when Megan's mother fell seriously ill, she reached out for support. All she wanted was someone to accompany her to a doctor's visit. None of the friends she'd supported could make it, not one. That's when it hit her. She'd been everyone's emotional backbone, but none of them were hers. So how do you protect yourself from that imbalance? First, ask the question, would they do the same for me? Then pause. Don't try to answer it with hope. Answer it with evidence. Second, act accordingly. Reduce your emotional labor where there is no reciprocity. Finally, remember, mutual relationships don't require constant proving. They just show up. At the end of the day, a relationship that only survives when you're the one giving isn't a relationship. It's a quiet form of self-neglect. Ask yourself the question. Let the truth guide your boundaries, and never feel guilty for stepping back from someone who wouldn't lift a finger for you. Number 4, protect your energy without guilt. Let's talk about what it really means to protect your energy, especially if they keep asking for your help but never give back. We're taught that being kind means being endlessly available, that helping others is a virtue no matter the cost. But here's the truth. Helping others is only noble when it doesn't destroy you in the process. When your peace, time, and emotional capacity are constantly sacrificed for people who never offer anything in return, that's not compassion, it's self-abandonment. Too often, people who overgive are also the ones who carry the most guilt. You start to believe that saying no makes you selfish, that setting a boundary makes you cold. But let's be honest, burning yourself to keep others warm isn't kindness. It's a quiet kind of self-harm. Because while you're out here showing up for everyone, the people you're helping rarely stop to ask if you're okay. They don't offer a match when you're freezing. They just keep taking your fire until there's nothing left to give. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your armor. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do not waste what remains of your life on others' agendas." That means your energy, your peace, your purpose. These are not up for constant negotiation. A Stoic doesn't abandon themselves just to avoid disappointing others. They help from strength, not from sacrifice. And they know the difference between being generous and being used. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Daniel, was the kind of person everyone leaned on. He was the strong one, the reliable one, and he wore that label with pride. But over the years, he noticed something. No one checked in on him. No one asked how he was coping. They just expected him to carry it all. One day, Daniel reached a breaking point. He didn't feel noble anymore. He felt hollow. That's when he started pulling back. He started saying no, started reclaiming his weekends, started protecting his mental space. And for the first time in years, he felt like he could breathe. So how do you protect your energy without guilt? First, remind yourself you are not responsible for everyone else's comfort. Second, learn to say no without an explanation. You don't owe people a detailed reason to honor your limits. And third, give only from overflow, not from your reserves. When you take care of yourself first, your help becomes more powerful, more sustainable, and more real. At the end of the day, constantly giving without receiving isn't generosity, it's depletion. Help when you can, support when it feels right, but never apologize for protecting your peace, because your energy isn't infinite, and not everyone deserves a share of it. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a thank God and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 5. Let absence teach them your value. Let's talk about one of the hardest but most powerful lessons to learn, especially if they keep asking for your help but never give back. That lesson is this: sometimes the only way to see someone's true intentions is to remove yourself. Step back. Go silent. Let your absence speak. Because people who only valued what you gave, not who you are, won't fight for your presence. They'll vanish when the benefits do. Here's the truth: when you're always available, always helping, always pouring yourself into others, it creates a dangerous illusion that you'll never stop. And some people come to depend on that version of you, not because they appreciate it, but because they've learned how to extract what they need. Your presence becomes expected, not cherished. Your kindness becomes routine, not respected. But when you finally pull back, when the help stops and the check-ins end, that's when the mask slips. Suddenly, you see who was really there for you, and who was just there for the perks. This is where Stoic clarity becomes your strength. Seneca once said, "Silence is sometimes the strongest scream." In Stoic thinking, you don't have to argue for your worth. You don't have to explain why you're stepping back. You simply observe. You remove yourself and let the reaction reveal the truth. A Stoic doesn't chase validation. They create space and let the silence do the talking. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Amanda, was always the friend who showed up. She gave rides, stayed up late to talk through breakups, lent money, helped pack boxes when people moved. But when she went through her own tough season, when she was grieving and overwhelmed, no one showed up for her. Not a single call, not a single visit. So Amanda stopped showing up too. Quietly, respectfully, she stepped back. And guess what? Most of those friends never reached out again. Her absence didn't bother them, because her presence had never been about her. It had only been about what she gave. So what do? First, resist the urge to explain your silence. You don't owe anyone a press release about your boundaries. Second, observe. Who checks in? Who notices? Who values you beyond what you do for them? And finally, honor what you find. Don't re-enter spaces where your value was only measured by your usefulness. At the end of the day, absence isn't cruel, it's clarifying. If someone disappears when you stop serving them, let them. Your worth isn't found in how much you give, it's found in who stays when the giving ends. Let silence teach the lesson your words never could. Number 6. Shift from resentment to clarity. Let's talk about what it means to move forward, not with rage, but with reason. Because if they keep asking for your help but never give back, it's only natural to feel a quiet, growing resentment. You do so much. You show up, you extend grace, you offer your time and energy, and in return, you get indifference, silence, or worse, entitlement. At first, you let it slide, but then it starts to pile up. You feel that tension in your chest, that bitterness creeping in, and you wonder, why am I always the one who cares more? Here's the truth. Anger is a signal, but it's not a strategy. Resentment isn't weakness, it's a clue. It's your mind trying to tell you that something's not right, that a boundary is being crossed, that a dynamic is no longer fair. But if you bottle that anger, suppress it, or let it fester, it turns toxic. And instead of clarity, you get chaos. You make decisions from a place of exhaustion, not empowerment. That's when the cycle repeats, because you're still reacting, not responding. This is where Stoic discipline changes everything. Elizabeth Kenny once said, "He who angers you, conquers you." In Stoic practice, that means you never let emotion dictate your values. A Stoic doesn't seek revenge. A Stoic seeks understanding. You take the signal, your frustration, your exhaustion, your quiet bitterness, and you investigate it. You ask, what pattern is creating this feeling? What does their behavior reveal about the nature of this connection? And then, instead of reacting, you choose, not out of rage, but from clarity. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Brandon, was always the one picking up the slack in his group. Whether it was work projects, favors, or emotional support, Brandon carried the weight. But one day, after a friend bailed on him for the third time in a crisis, Brandon felt himself getting angry, not explosive, just tired. At first he thought, maybe I need to express this better. But then he paused. He reflected. And he saw the pattern clearly. This friend wasn't just careless. They were consistent. That clarity gave Brandon peace. Not because he got revenge, but because he finally stopped pouring energy into someone who never returned it. So how do you do the same? First, notice what your resentment is trying to tell you. Second, sit with it. Don't suppress it, but don't act on it immediately. Third, shift your decision-making from emotion to observation. What's really happening here? What needs to change? At the end of the day, clarity is stronger than anger. Let your frustration guide you, but never let it lead you. Observe the pattern, adjust your course, and walk away, not out of rage, but out of wisdom. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply. Number 7. Give with purpose, not out of pressure. Let's talk about one of the biggest mindset shifts you'll ever make, especially if they keep asking for your help but never give back. And that shift is this: learning to give from principle, not pressure. It sounds simple, but for many of us, it's not. We've been taught that saying yes makes us kind, that being generous means never disappointing others. But there's a quiet line between generosity and people-pleasing, and crossing it too often will cost you your peace. Here's the truth. There's a difference between giving from strength and giving from fear. Strength-based giving is rooted in clarity. It says, "This aligns with my values, so I'm happy to do it." But fear-based giving, that's when you help not because you want to, but because you're afraid. Afraid of seeming rude, afraid of being judged, afraid of being left out or labeled as selfish. And the more you give from that place, the more disconnected you feel from yourself. You're saying yes on the outside, but silently resenting it on the inside. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes a guidepost. Epictetus said, "The wise man gives not from pressure, but from principle." That means the decision to help should come from who you are, not who you're afraid someone will think you are. A Stoic helps when it's meaningful, when it's useful, when it's aligned with their values, not when guilt, fear, or social pressure twist their arm. And the moment you start honoring that distinction, everything changes. You go from being a people pleaser to a person of purpose. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Chris, was the definition of helpful. He said yes to everything, took on tasks that weren't his, helped friends move, run errands, cover shifts. Whatever was asked, he'd do it. But over time, Chris felt exhausted, bitter even. He realized that most of his yeses weren't coming from generosity. They were coming from fear. Fear of disappointing people, fear of losing approval. So he made a shift. Chris started asking himself, do I want to do this, or do I just feel like I have to? If the answer didn't align with his principles, he politely declined. And for the first time, his kindness felt genuine because it was freely chosen, not emotionally forced. So how do you do the same? First, pause before you respond. Check in with your intent. Second, ask yourself, am I giving out of strength or fear? And third, be okay with disappointing people who only valued your compliance, not your well-being. At the end of the day, kindness without clarity becomes a trap. Give from purpose, not pressure. Let your generosity reflect your integrity, not your fear of rejection. That's where real peace lives. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights.